was planning to start a video podcast in January. I was going to, and I'm still going to, talk about what it's like to be in the indie film world. Sort of set expectations, mostly for people just starting out, whether you're a filmmaker or an actor. Also for people who just want to understand more about the industry. Now, I've decided to just jump in now. I had this whole plan for set and all this stuff, but with all the chatter going on the internet about indie film and about safety on indie film, I just felt the need to just start. And what I want to start is, what is an indie film? That's the first thing people need to understand. Now, to me, there are two types of indie films. There's the industry indie film, which is any film made outside of the studio system. And then there's the actual true independent filmmaker who doesn't have any foot really in the typical industry door. So what do I mean by all this? So let's say you're making an industry independent film. Again, a film outside the studio, but the people involved are very ingrained in the industry. They either have connections to money, production companies, star power, all of those things, and they're able to raise, let's say, $8 million for a film. And the way that works, because people are a little bit confused, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. I mean, yes, for a Hollywood film, which is normally like a $40, $50 million picture, it's less. But for an independent film, that's a lot of money, which is why a lot of indie filmmakers feel like that's not really an indie. But let's go with the premise that it is, because I'm not here to judge anybody, just to explain, okay? That film may raise $8 million. Now, they have promised their investors an $8 million film, meaning they might have car explosions, helicopter shots, all these things that go along with a bigger budget movie. But what really happens with that money? The money goes mostly to the producers and the star names. It doesn't actually go into the film. So the producers will take a few million because they raised the money. Okay. The stars will get money. They'll often be listed as producers to give them that money. So they're not really working as producers, those stars. It's a way of paying them because their name is being used to raise the money. So in a sense, they've brought that money in and they get a percentage of it. So what ends up happening in the end is that their $8 million budget becomes $1 million, maybe less. It becomes a much smaller budget, but they have promised their investors a big film, and they still have to deliver on that. And that's where things, I think, start to go awry. Now, some things you may not know about the industry if you don't work in the independent film world or the industry in general is that people are expected to work a 14 to 16-hour day. Let's talk about what that is. So let's pretend it's a corporate job. It's a business, you're going for a job interview, or it's a job working in a store, and somebody says to you, you're really great, we want to hire you, we want you to know what to expect from your day. You will be expected to work 14 hours a day minimum. You'll have to be back at the job 10 hours later. You'll have to drive an hour each way to get to the job on your own after working those long days, 6 days a week. That's the expectation. It's a privilege to get to make movies. So you work those hours. That's just the way it is. I'm sort of complaining, but I'm really just trying to explain how it all works out. And being on a film set, especially as a crew member, is not all glamorous. Like, I think a lot of people out there think, oh, it's just fun. But you're working these long days. You're lugging heavy equipment. You're working in the hot sun or in a location that doesn't have a lot of ventilation. They can't run the air conditioner because that messes up sound. So you're sweating all day. You're drinking 10 bottles of water and you're wondering why you haven't needed to pee. That's what the day is like. People are tired. People are overworked. And then they're trying to do things on these indie films that they really can't afford anymore. And then horrible things can happen. Now, a true independent film, as I like to call it, is made by a filmmaker. Now, a filmmaker is different than a director or a writer or a producer because they do all the jobs. They're a writer, director, producer, editor. They have to wear all the hats all the time while they're making their film because they know their budget is tight. And they're planning for a tight budget. Okay, they're not going in, hopefully. I mean, I'm sure there's crazy people everywhere, but a true indie filmmaker knows they can't afford to do things like blowing up cars or helicopter shots because they know they're going to have less than 7 figures in their budget. Most likely, they will have a lot less than 7 figures. Some will have less than 6. So they're not planning for amazing, big, expensive items. They're planning for creative work and finding new ways and innovative ways of doing things to create content about topics they care about, whether it's systemic racism, LGBTQ rights, abortion, family values, whatever it is that their heart is in. That's why they're making the film. They're making a statement about something. At least hopefully they are. There are people who make indie film and work really hard doing all of that, and they're still safe, and they're not making statements. That's not the world I live in. And most indie filmmakers are making films because they care about something, and the people working on them are behind that project 200%. And they have a community of people around them giving them advice for free, helping each other out, coming on as extras, watching rough cuts, just helping people along because we all know the situation we're in. And we can't do things outside of what we can afford to do because we can't afford to make those mistakes. No one can. No one can because human safety should matter. But indie filmmakers pride themselves on doing things the right way within their budget. Those are the people that keep making indie film. That's the only way you can keep going. You have to know what your limitations are, and then you have to be creative and figure out how you're going to do what you want to get done in a safe manner. But you know what you're heading into, and that is the difference between these industry indie films, which again, these people have one foot in the industry door, they're making a lot of money, the producers, the crew is paying for it. And the cast is too. If you're not the star name, by the way, in an indie film, you're not getting millions. I don't care if it's an $8 million picture, you're making scale. Okay, the money goes to a very small group of people, and it's not a judgment, it's a business call. They are doing it strictly as a business. Whereas an indie film, sure, do you hope to make money? Absolutely. But a true indie film, an indie filmmaker, you're happy if you break even. And if you can make a profit for your investors, that's great. That's wonderful. Or for yourself, if you are the investor in your film. That's wonderful, but that's not realistic or the real plan. Okay, people do make money in the film industry as independent artists, and I will talk about that other times. I'm not trying to be all negative, like you can't make any money, but you're not really going to make money as a filmmaker. You're going to make money in specific roles. And we'll talk about that another time. I appreciate you joining me today and listening and trying to wrap your head around how this world works. Because I think until we really accept and are truthful about how these things work, they're not going to change. Things aren't going to get better. And we need to make them the best we can.